Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hi. Welcome to our education tutorial. Let me just let a few more people in here. So it's lovely to see you, whether it be your morning, your evening, or your afternoon. It's lovely to have your company here for this session. This is a topic that I absolutely love to explore. And you'll probably notice that as the way that I run my courses is very much a result of reflecting deeply on this question. And so, being an education tutorial, this is really about us exploring together how this might manifest itself in the kind of education work that you're doing, and to bring any questions or to think together, to design together responses and ideas. So the question that we have is like, how do we create a culture of ongoing learning and mentorship in the education programs that we organize? So before we get going with that, though, I would like to acknowledge that I'm calling in from the unceded lands of the Gubbi Gubbi with the Jinnabarra to my east, and it's been an absolutely beautiful day here in the Sunshine Coast. I'm not sure how it is for you, but drop in the chat where you're calling in from, and yeah, if you know the country on which you're seated as well. So thank you for being here. I'd also like you to perhaps just have a moment to reflect too on what it is about this particular topic that is important to you. Like, what are you hoping to explore here? What is important about this idea of ongoing learning, mentorship? Is it something that you're exploring to include in your course? Yeah, if there's any reflections on that, that would be wonderful. And just to let you know too that unless you've got your video on, we won't see you here on the screen. And I always love to see people, but I understand if you're cooking dinner or driving somewhere. This morning, someone was on a call. Who was it? Oh, I think it was Sarah. And she was sort of like flipping her phone, and we were starting to get a little bit dizzy because it was spinning around all over the place. But that, yeah. So I understand sometimes you're busy and you don't want to be on screen, but if you can, it's lovely to see you. So that's great. Hi, Kate. So, as I said, this topic is, oh, someone else is here. So, this topic is around how to create a culture of ongoing learning and mentorship in the education programs that you run. Now, I've prepared something earlier for you, and here's a little, check your um, chat box, and hopefully there's something that's dropped in there that you can open up. It's a document that you can maybe have, like, I don't know if it's going to work with how you're working. If you're on a phone, it might not be so easy to do, but I'll walk you through it anyway. It's and it's perhaps something you can have a think about and a look at later on as well. So essentially, the first thing that I wanted to really talk about was that permaculture education is a lifelong learning journey. It's something that we dip into. We might take a course, we might go and do an expedition, we might be practicing in our garden, but there's this lifelong learning approach. There's always something else to know. There's always something else to discover. And that's what's exciting about it. Like it's about how we live. It's about all the different dimensions of life, from, the biological, excuse me, the biological dimensions, the social dimensions, all the different economic dimensions. So there's always something curious. And we always, like once you start scratch the surface of one thing, you start to become curious. And so where your questions, when you're, say if you offer a short workshop or a course, the questions that come to you while you're there are the ones that are present with you at that moment. But often the questions that you really want to ask are not the ones that come to mind when you're at the workshop. And then you get home and, oh, I wish I'd asked that. Bother. Like, I know you've probably all been in that experience. How do you create a kind of learning environment with the offerings that you are sharing into the world as permaculture educators that, thank you, my yes, it is, Helen. um, but how do you create experiences for people who come in contact with your learning, your educational offerings that offer that possibility, that people can come back and ask questions, that there might be some kind of learning journey that continues. So, before we go into all the different possibilities, and there is just so many, I'd love to hear from you. These are the questions that are in the little document that I just shared. I might just reshare that. So, for those of you who've just joined, hang on, I'll do that in a minute. So, the first question I wanted to ask you was really to take a few minutes. So, like, you can switch off a video or whatever, just take a few minutes to think about what are the kind of ways that you've felt supported in an ongoing learning journey? It doesn't have to be anything to do with permaculture. It could be any kind of learning experience that you've been in. So put yourself back, like into that state of being a learner where you felt, oh, yes, I feel really supported. I feel like I can tap into that, more knowledge. Like, what is it about that? What are the qualities of it? What were the features of that that made it good for you? And what might be good for one person is might not be the other person's favorite thing. So like there's so many different ways, which is also an important thing to keep in mind. So let's just take a few minutes to reflect on that. Like what is it that supports you? What helps you to keep learning after a course? And what are any of the kind of mentoring things that are going on in your world at the moment? So let's just take 2 or 3 minutes now. Feel free to turn off your screen, and then I'll just mute myself. I have a tendency to keep speaking, but I will mute myself and give you time to think. I'm sure there's lots more things to reflect on. But as a starting point, where did you go in your mind? What were some things that you jotted down that you feel are important to help you to be in that ongoing learning, to be in that culture of ongoing learning? Does anyone feel like they'd like to share anything? Nikki, hi.
Hello. I think the biggest thing for me, similar to what Dora has written in the chat, is community. When you can discuss things with people afterwards, either online or like via email or chat or something like that, I think that helps reinforce things that you may not have understood or helps you see things from a slightly different perspective, which could just widen the whole experience and the whole understanding for you. I think that's the biggest part for me.
Mm,
And sharing resources as well was another thing I wrote down. When
yeah.
people say, "Oh, have a look at this web video," or read this book," or "Here's an article." So I found some amazing resources that other people have shared. So they're the big things for me.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I was thinking about this aspect of the community that follows on. And one could be like if you're the educator and you're running a program, you could be the one that sets up a group where you say, if you'd like to continue staying in touch with the people who've been here, here's a WhatsApp group, here's a Facebook group, here's a Mining Networks, here's a something that you can join in and be part of. And you can either be helping to moderate that, or you can just let it be a free for all, and you choose how you want to make that. Or maybe there's someone in the course who really is onto that and said, "Oh, I'd love to create a WhatsApp group for all of us." And as an educator, you might just go, "Great, there's something that cohort that's come through your course wants to take on and manage." And you can be part of that group or not be part of that group. That's up to you. So like you can either create something and manage it, you can give the group its own, like go ahead, yes, do that, set it up, share your resources, help to troubleshoot your designs, organize meetups, like suggest things that they might do in there. But and then the other one that you might think about in terms of community is suggest that people really tap into their local community groups that already exist. So perhaps there's already a local permaculture group that exists, or a local Langer group, or a local this group, or a community garden group, and say, perhaps a good way to carry on the learning and to keep learning from people who are doing this in your local area would be to connect up with them. So like, when we say community, it can be that ongoing learning can be in your world as an educator, or you can encourage people to go out into the world and continue their learning community in other ways. And so, you know, there's such a breadth of opportunity there, but the key point of that really creating that community can exist in lots of different spaces. And you know, that creating a shared space where, yeah, you're sharing books or articles or films or opportunities, new workshops on interesting topics or a free webinar or this or that, like what's going on? It's like when we've all got our eyes on all these different places, collectively we find that information. So having a spot to make that relevant is really great. Yeah. So thanks, Nikki. I think those two are really, really super helpful ways, and developing that in a way that's relevant to the workshops you're running. And keep in mind too, sometimes you might just be running like a 1 hour workshop. And so the kind of follow-up you would do from that and creating a learning community would be very different from one of you've been through a year-long process together. So there's, like do it in context. And maybe if you're someone who runs a lot of regular workshops and courses, you might think, oh, well, I have this group, and anyone who comes through any of my workshops can join that. And so it has an ongoing life, but new people are coming in all the time, which keeps, it dynamic and alive. So I think, um, yeah, it's all contextual, and the answer is it all depends, as things in permaculture always tend to. It all depends on the context, and yeah. So that's why I really want to talk about this, because there's so many opportunities, and I think the key thing is recognizing the importance of creating a culture of ongoing learning and mentoring, and how you feel like you can meet that, and like how much can you put into holding that, and how much do you want to um encourage people to tap into resources that are there. And so then knowing what's in your, like if you're doing local community workshops, knowing what those local community resources are and point people to that. Oh, you could subscribe to, the in my area here, the permaculture Mullany action group, for example, and or sign up to the permaculture magazine in your country and catch, like, so there's so different dimensions of ways to do it. But I do like the idea though of staying in touch with people. So you have, like if there's a way that you can create a kind of community that has that ongoing nature from you as well as some kind of external community. That way, people have come to do a workshop with you because they really want to learn with you. And so, how do they get ongoing mentoring? Ask those questions they forgot to answer. So, how do you make yourself available? That question is really important to answer when you're designing your education programs. Jerry, thanks, Nikki.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I came up with a couple of ideas, not specifically to do with permaculture, other parts of my life. One is a sort of a herbal, or it's not really herbal medicine, but it's kind of, foraging for wildflowers, sort of herbal, home use of herbal stuff, and making skincare that I've done with a teacher here in Ireland, but it was all done online. But what she offers, which I found really helpful, is like once a month over the course of, I think it's like 6 months over the course of the summer. She offers a kind of a live Q&A session, um, which like, yeah, so it's interesting because people email in their questions and then and everybody joins up. She's the only one on video, so it's not like a massive free-for-all where people talk and take up loads of time. But you still get the sense that you're in the group with other people. It's funny, even though you don't see them. Um, and you kind of know they're there, and yeah, and then she answers the questions, and it's kind of, yeah, it's nice because you've got access to somebody in a very sort of direct way.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then another one that I had was when I was doing my professional training a few years ago as an OT, placements, where you do actual, a bit like the old-fashioned apprenticeship idea, where you're actually sort of working alongside somebody. So I don't know how that could apply to permaculture education, but
Yeah.
maybe it could in some instances. Um, yeah, for me, I know that I'm a member of so many WhatsApp groups from different courses, and I'm very enthusiastic about my participation for a while, and then it just kind of tailors off, do you know?
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I think there's something about the in-person bit for me as well, somehow managing to weave that in.
Yeah. Yeah, really great points, Jerry. Thanks for that. And I think that's probably the story of most WhatsApp groups, unless there's a ongoing course that's going and the conversation is going in the WhatsApp at the same time, or unless you keep the WhatsApp group open and then there's new people that are coming, like I was saying before, like the new cohort might come into that group. Um, but that's also it might just be useful for it to be a temporary thing. You leave a workshop, you need a bit of extra support or ideas, or you're really enthusiastic and you want to still stay. You might swap phone numbers with people you really want to stay in touch with, and you probably don't really necessarily want to see any of the other people. And like, I don't know, like maybe. So you use it as you want to, and then it falls away. And I think it's really important to know also to look at this like in anything that you're designing as ongoing thing, like don't make it a noose around your neck that you feel like you have to maintain these things forever. Like while they're useful, continue. And then if you notice that there's a drop off, you can just say, oh, I'll be closing this group if you're running it, for example, I'll be wrapping up this group in the next month. Is there any final questions that you want to ask? Make sure you swap numbers with anyone you want to talk to and give people the chance to wrap that up. And then you close it and you say, if you want to get in touch with me about anything, come along. Sorry, like come along to my live Q&A session, or, here's my email or something. So I think this is something that often there are all these sort of loose groups that just die this sort of very slow death. Like I will set up a WhatsApp group for the next month after the course. So anything that you've missed, come in and talk about. Like you could be really time specific, and I think that could be useful. So it, the the more you put a boundary around something, like this is how like life works in itself. Like it has a cellular membrane, and then there's more opportunity for things to bounce around. If it's just kind of like no edges, then you don't get that sort of intensity. So think about that too. I think that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that in about the WhatsApp groups, but also, the live Q&As are really helpful. And you could do it as a simple Zoom like this and have people coming in and seeing each other. Or, if you don't feel like you want to just randomly get a question out of left field and be, not quite sure what to do with it, that's often when people control it. So they're prepared. So here's the questions that I'm going to answer. I've received them before. I've prepared how I might respond to them, and then I will deliver that. So, anyone who sent in a question up to 12 hours or 24 hours before the session goes live, I'll respond to it. And so that's kind of a useful model too. And I think we can design them however we feel confident we want to do it. But it's kind of nice, I think, having that regular contact, that monthly contact, and that live Q&A could also be something that you open up, not just the people in your group, but it could be a sort of a general conversation as well. So that's, yeah, great. There was someone else who was there. Maura, did you have your hand up there for a minute? Did you want to jump in?
Okay, I will. So I think also having this email support in the background. So when you haven't got a question, when you've got a question and you're going through stuff and it's not being answered in the conversation, to be able to email in and like you do and get an answer back and do that. But the other thing I found was like to be involved in conversations like these or like the tutorials where I'm reading the things and I can't quite get my head around, how I'm going to turn it out. And then I watch somebody do a presentation on what they've done or that kind of thing. And then it kind of just all tumbles into place.
Yeah.
Different types of learners express things in different ways. So if I've got somebody visual talking to me, or somebody who's talking about how they've heard something or that's different to my style of learning, you know, um, like today's, those two were very different, but I got so much out of it from the permaculture design course. And it actually helps me cement or unlock things the questions I don't know to ask yet.
Yeah.
And so when I'm watching somebody else, I go, oh, that's why that's not working. Or, yeah.
Yeah.
Was
I think that is such a good point. And, I absolutely love the design studios and the education labs for that point. That it's foregrounding someone else who is working deeply on it, have thought a lot about it, and have had their own thought process and of solving issues in a completely different way. So whether it be like whatever you're doing in your ongoing work, find a way to maybe tell a story about what someone's doing, case studies, or platform people to run webinars, or bring people together, like even maybe have a 6 monthly, you could have a 6 monthly, where are you all at now? Let's share what you're all up to. Like there's lots of different ways to do that too in whatever kind of work that you're doing. Katie, you wanted to say something?
Hello, sorry. The opposite is also true with the whole when somebody's like deeply involved in something. Because I know being a Gen Xer, I didn't grow up with computers, and I get asked like, and I'm a computer person, but quite often I'll get like, oh, can you show me how to do this? And someone should come in and they'll blah, 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 and their fingers go like this, and then they go, and then they send you off an email and they go, yeah, it's just like that, and you go, but you've like, and I'm also neurodivergent, so I'm very literal with what I say. And they go, I say, well, you've just asked me to hit this button, but there's no such thing as that button on my computer screen. Oh, it's also called the this, and it's also that icon there, and it's all this assumed knowledge that if you are learning a process for the first time, I've just had this argument with Notion. Um, because there's a whole heap of assumed knowledge that just goes along, but we weren't brought up with iPads and computers like a younger generation. I don't think I had my first computer until I was 30. So like I've picked it up quite quick, but it's not there's a language that's and a thought process that goes into it that's not it's not intuitive to us. And I also like, so I'll watch a lot of tutorials, and because I don't know what the end product looks like, I don't know how to get myself there. And so I end up doing the loop over and over again. And I go back to the part where it worked, and then I follow the instructions again verbatim. And then and you get stuck in this loop, and you don't know the question to ask because you don't know what it's supposed to look like in the end, but you sort of got an idea that this product does that thing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think there's the question therefore is, what are the kind of things that you can include in your programs? If you've got a short, like you're doing a 2 week PDC or something, and then people are going off after that. And what are the ways that they could come back
Yeah.
and get
And
more
so
information?
I've been trying to do it the opposite way. So I run the tutorials because there is a whole heap of neurodivergent people that need, like ADHD people, they see the end product and then they reverse engineer it back. And I didn't realize that that's what I'd been doing all these years. And so now I run all my tutorials by showing what the end product is and running through, this is, or what do you want to actually achieve? Oh, we could do it this way, and then we and then how do we like make that happen through using this process?
Yeah, great. And then I think too, what are the kind of that's while they're there with you, but what are the things that you can carry on afterwards that can help continue that kind of level of support for people?
Yeah,
What does that look like? What are the kind of so that could be, if it's a face-to-face thing, having a drop-in design lab once a month or something
yeah.
at a community garden or at your place, whatever. Like just have a design studio, open studio. Like maybe that's it. Like people
Well,
come.
I've only sort of worked it out because it was just like the last week that I came to this conclusion because for a lot of my life, I actually thought I was really dumb, and I didn't like learn. Like I thought I couldn't learn, and just the idea of learning made me very stressed and all this sort of stuff. So it's actually like yeah, it's a discovery that I've just come to, and I'm like, well, so now I've got to work out how I can get the support that I need, so that I can do the learning that I need,
Yeah.
so that and now that I'm finding that, then I'm also finding there's a lot of other people like me out there.
And you're able to design programs that they're really helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think if you know if a lot of things are gate kept, and so that if you're kept not smart, then people are relied upon, and they can better themselves, and it's a socio-economic thing where like you think, oh, I just can't do it, I mustn't be very smart.
Mm.
Well, no, if I asked a snake to knit me a sock, it might like to do it, and it would love a sock, it would keep it nice and warm, but it fucking couldn't make you a sock if it tried, you know. Like,
So, the question is that too, that makes that I'm thinking of as you're saying that, like, which sort of bounces off what you said, but not exactly what related to what you're talking about. It's like, how available do you want to make yourself? So once you've if you're doing an education program, uh, you know, there was, do you want to be available for a monthly design studio that people can drop in on? Or is that a follow-on program that you run? Do people sign up to be part of that?
see,
Like, is
that's
that a,
another thing I have to be careful of, because I tend to, people ring me and want me to do all these things, and then they don't actually want to pay for any of it. And, I've got people ringing me all the time. Oh, and I end up 3 hours on the phone and looking into things, and then somebody else gets the contract, and I think, oh, like, bugger.
yeah. Well, I just realized on something like Calendly, right, which is a Calendly booking system. When you've all experienced it, well, most of you experienced it when you book in to do a design tutorial or something. Like, I set it up so you can, here's the slots, pick your slot and time, and then it automates sending you a calendar invite. You can also set it up in a way that, like, you could say, okay, this is ongoing mentoring from Katie. You've done this course, now you want some ongoing mentoring. You can have 2 free slots as part of the program, but if you want more, this is my hourly rate, and I would love to speak to you. Here's my calendar, book in. Come and speak to me. I've got all this knowledge about this. And so you can use it to actually charge through that. You just link it up with your bank system, and boom, it does it. So, like, I think if the follow-up doesn't have to be always for free. Like, this is something to think about too, like mentoring. So there's an ongoing culture of, sorry, the learning of sort of a culture of ongoing learning, but there's also mentoring. Now, mentoring can be free, but it doesn't have to be free. So this is something to think about too. How could you create like a mentoring or coaching program? Like, this is a form of education in and of itself. How do you design? So you might have a course, and then there's people who do that and they get to a point, go, right, okay, well, I've got that, but I really want to take this and do this, but I need someone to hold my hand a bit more, or I need some deeper diving on this and this and this. So one, you could fill all those gaps, or you could collect a group of people to help fill those gaps. And so they are really valuable ongoing mentoring services that are also chargeable. And I would encourage people to think about that. Like, is there an ongoing membership group? I mean, have you ever been part of a membership group before where you sort of, it's a club basically, you each month there's a different theme, and there's resources, and there's a place to do Q&As. And so it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it's something that people can drop in anytime they want. There can be a monthly one, or an annual membership. I mean, they take a little bit to organize. I'm not saying that they're simple and easy to do, but if you do have an ongoing group of people that you'd like to talk with, and you've got lots of people coming through your workshops, it might be something that people would be interested in. I wonder if anyone's had any experience with those and what they think about them, or how it's worked for you. Before we go to you, Joe, I just realized that Helen had her hand up before and we didn't get to you, Helen. Are you there still?
Hi, Morag. Yeah, sorry, I'm having real problems. I can only use my phone this morning, so apologies for that. Yeah, I did. I did have my hand up. We've kind of moved on a little bit from there. Can you hear me okay?
Beautifully.
Oh, um, yeah, I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. One of the things that I have found a really invaluable source of information and a lovely community is I started volunteering. And it's the National Garden Scheme, so NGS, and across Britain, there is a wonderful, wonderful scheme whereby people open their gardens to the public. And for a small fee, it's meant to raise money for charity. That's the initial aim, the prime aim of it. But in the meantime, you can volunteer and work alongside. I volunteered last weekend. There was a man who was a cactus specialist, a succulent specialist, and his wife, she looked after this wonderful arboretum and a fruit orchard and so on. So you've got an absolute wealth of information. And of course, and everybody's happy, absolutely thrilled to talk about their gardens and share their knowledge with you. And of course, you're tapping into an existing network because they know somebody who knows somebody, and all these lovely people come along and talk about their gardens. And so there's this, you're just tapping into this wealth, this rich vein of
Yeah, thank you.
knowledge and expertise. And you just feel automatically part of the community. And also, you get that really good feel good factor because you're learning, but also you're helping. And it's this virtuous circle of knowledge exchange, helping, nurturing. And I just find that absolutely, it's lovely. It's really lovely. And I don't know whether there's anything similar in other countries, but it's such a lovely scheme, I think. And the people who benefit, all these different charities, Macmillan, cancer charities, young horticulturalist charities. So it's kind of promoting the next generation of permaculture farmers, practitioners, organic farmers, and so on. Organic gardeners, sorry. It's just lovely, and I
Mm,
totally recommend it.
thank you, Helen. I don't know if there's something quite so similar here in Australia, but I wanted to mention just to add on to that, there's things like the edible garden trails that happen in different cities and regions now. So like keep an eye out for those and get along to those if they're in your region. Or if they're not, like maybe organize a group to set one up because it's such a fun thing to do. It's the same, you can go around to different people's permaculture gardens and you just have this sort of open day and you can limit the numbers. You can sort of sell tickets like this is as many tickets there are, and then that's that. I know the one that I support down in Sanford, they get something like 1,000 people coming through. It's massive. So it's a huge thing that they prepare for each year, but it doesn't have to be as big as that. There's also community garden networks because they also have open days for going around to different community gardens and you can get to experience different places. And then also, having permaculture clubs. So the Permaculture Noosa Club that's not far from me here, for example, they have a monthly tour to a garden. And so people put their gardens forward. They also have a monthly gathering where they bring in a speaker. They have a seed library. And so if you don't have a club next to you or if there's a club and it's sort of a little bit away, like you have permission to create a local club. Like you don't have to see some big authority to be checked off to say, yes, you can start a permaculture club. If you have a PDC and or if you have an interest in permaculture, you can start a permaculture club or whatever you want to call it, and gather people together and do things like share films, have discussions, have a local picnic, go to local gardens, and just find people who want to do that kind of thing that you're interested in. So yeah, there's the big schemes like what you're talking about, Helen, which are absolutely fabulous, right down to these sort of like micro community hubs and that are doing that kind of work. And that's part of that culture of the ongoing learning where it's not necessarily you as the educator creating that, but you're encouraging people to connect in with those groups. So yeah, Fantastic. Joe, you had your hand up.
Oh, hi, Maureen.
Hello.
Yeah, I was just thinking before, when you were talking, there are YouTube memberships now, like to see an actual YouTube, they have members. Like I follow a geophysicist to get information about the solar activity, which makes a difference for the animals and the growing and stuff. And he has some videos that are membership. So he is making a living off his YouTube. And if we did a little permaculture one, that is another avenue.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing with the membership, the YouTube membership part of it is you could have your free YouTube
Yeah.
pieces that attract people to you, and then you can have the membership bit, which is for anyone who, like, your members can ask you questions.
Yeah.
And they say, can you make a film about this? And then you make a film and share it out and it becomes available to people
Yeah.
in that membership group. Or, perhaps it's on the public facing YouTube, you have like a short snip of a tour that you did to a really interesting garden. And then in
Yeah.
the membership bit, you have the full tour with all the information. So you can set that up. And so YouTube is one way that you can do that. That's great. I'd forgotten about that one. Thanks for
That
reminding
just
me.
reminded me. The
Yeah.
weedy gardener. The weed. Oh, he
Oh,
says
yeah. Yeah.
he says he's the weedy garden. He's not the weedy gardener. He does, he does that. He has a membership one and a public one.
Yep.
He's
And
good.
so I know Charles Dowding does. A lot of people have set up that
Yeah.
as a way of generating a little bit of income, because I think honestly, you don't really make anything from ads unless you're sort of Mr. Beast on YouTube. If anyone knows, has anyone got a 12-year-old?
I don't know.
The Beast. I'm sorry, it's a really bad YouTube channel. But anyway, if you've got a 12-year-old,
Oh,
you will know what it's about. Um, but yeah, he has like so many people on his YouTube channel. He probably makes a bundle load. But if you've got just a reasonable amount of people, that
yeah.
you don't really make anything from it. So having a membership, but is one way of generating some income for yourself. But also as a way to create a really valuable space where people can ask you who they trust as an educator, because they've come to you for a workshop or whatever it might be, to have a space to have an ongoing. So yeah, say once they've finished it, say sign up and become a member of my YouTube channel, and then you can ask me any questions ongoing, and I can answer those questions and give you a visual response, which is really interesting as well. So I think,
Yeah.
like, that's an interesting model. Um, Also, things like Patreon are a way to have an engaged group of people. And so these they're not, you could be $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month. You can suggest different levels of what people get in different memberships. And so Patreon would probably be one of the simplest and easiest way to set up a membership. And so
Oh, wow.
you might have a public facing YouTube, but then you say, and come over to my Patreon. That's where, there'll be the in-depth things, and that's where I'll have my articles and any resources. You can ask me questions in there. And so people just pay, like, I'm a Patreon supporter of a number of really fabulous independent
Oh,
people, like Charlie McGee, like Brenna Quinlan. They all have Patreon pages, and that's where they do get a fair bit of their income from, of having people just independently supporting them for their work.
right.
So that in terms of what we're talking about of the mentoring, these are platforms
Mm.
that you can use for that, and as a way of generating some ongoing income from it. The other thing to do is to think about, okay, well, I'm actually offering a program, and I will incorporate like a sense that I am going to make myself available for at least 12 months for this group. And that's part of what you offer in your service, and then cost it accordingly. So, there's many different ways that you can do that. But I think, what we've come to is this sort of the key thing of, how do you make yourself available but not drain yourself? How do you make yourself available and be a really good supporter of the people who coming to see you, and perhaps you're wanting to run a whole lot of short workshops that happen every season. There's going to be something that's new, and if that group of people are still in your world, you might be able to share with them through that. Oh, here's what's coming up next season. They're probably going to be the most likely people who will sign up for your next series of workshops. And so it's a way to develop up like an ongoing network of people who become part of your, ecosystem of offerings. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat as it's coming through. So was there anything else that anyone wanted to add in terms of things that they've found really useful in the past? I mean, then if you've got open the little handout that I made, the next page is sort of talking about, some of the different ones. Like, what are the ones that resonate most with you? So, like, just think for a moment about that. Like, we've talked about lots of different things, from WhatsApp groups to Patreons to mentoring groups to all different sorts of things. If you were to sort of take a breath and go, all right, so if if I was to want to offer something, what might that look like? And what feels right is, so here, in case you can't open it, some of the suggestions are having like seasonal learning rhythms. So that could be like themed gatherings throughout the year. So you bring people back in for different events. And it could be a paid event or a free event. It's up to you for that. It could be creating communities of practice where you have regular meetups where people can share and their ideas and troubleshoot and get feedback. So there's that peer-to-peer learning. It is a community of practice. Maybe you've got open forums. These are the ones that we've talked about, like, your WhatsApp or Mighty Network or a Facebook group, whatever it might be that you want to create, where people can just touch base, reach out for feedback anytime, share a whole lot of resources. The peer mentoring is like, maybe, you might set up an opportunity where people can get together and really work on projects. And perhaps, encourage people to start shared projects. If you're in a local area, particularly, that's something that could work, like having a shared garden or maybe a shared seed bank, or maybe film nights. So the group that come out of a workshop keep on learning together by organizing something that then is offering something more to other people, so it kind of amplifies the work. And maybe you could do, like a shared project in there. It says mapping. What I mean by that is, you could be mapping what's going on in your neighborhood or your bioregion about what's happening. And that's a shared kind of project that you're working on together. Yeah, like little story circles or kitchen table conversations where, you come together, you say, oh, let's get together every couple of weeks down at the local cafe and we'll have a chat and talk about things, share what's going on with each other. And you could do that similarly as a digital campfire, come together and just, have a yarn together, just for connection and support and motivation to carry on, and, have a bit of a yarn about, where your roadblocks are, and, why you haven't continued on. People give you a bit of a pep up, like, is that it's nice to have that group to do that with. And another way is like having buddy systems where, within a group, people find just one other person, and then they're kind of like check-in people. Or yeah, like I was saying earlier, like having that one-to-one mentoring or coaching that could be using a Calendly booking system, or people can get in touch. And, I'm on the phone, well, on Zoom mostly, just about every day, talking to somebody about some project. I'm always in that role. And I've got a meeting um, early tomorrow with, one of the young guys from the refugee settlement who wants to talk about his projects. And then later on that day, there's someone from a program that I ran 3 years ago, a young guy who really is looking now he wants to take the next step into this. He's finished his music degree, but he really wants to come into this work now. And, like, what advice have I got for him? And so, making yourself available is a really beautiful thing to be able to do. So what are the sorts of, I mean, they're just some of the ideas. Some, having design charrettes, having design studios. Um, I don't know if any of you were around when we used to run Pachakachas here in where they're like 7-minute presentations on a particular topic. And so we would have an hour and there'd be like 5 to 7 people who would present their Blair, help me out here. How do you say? Because in Australia you go pecha kucha, but it's pachakacha, isn't it? Is that right? Did I get it?
Pretty close. Pecha kucha.
Pecha kucha. There you go. Pecha kucha. Thank you. Right. So anyway, those. And there's a format that goes with that where you it's just, yeah, a 7-minute, and you have 20 seconds per slide, 20 slides, and you share your project. And it's fun. It's so fun. It's dynamic. It's fast. It gets people in conversation. It's a really great thing to do. Yeah. So Annie, which ones of those do you get drawn to most? So perhaps maybe drop it in the chat and just let's see what are the sorts of things. Gwenelle, that's a really wonderful chat response in there. I encourage people to have a read. And I think it's really important to put boundaries around yourself because, the longer that you do it, the more that you will find that there's time being asked for you. And as much as you might want to and love to do it, there's only so much time that you can make available. So, yeah, Gwenny, I was talking about channeling individual requests into services that could be paid for. So that's kind of what we were talking about there, about whether if people would really want to touch base with you, maybe there is this sort of membership group that you can channel people to and say, look, I'd love to answer questions. I've got this group over here. It doesn't cost you that much, but here is a place that you can come and ask your questions and get feedback and find other people. The other thing you might like to do would be organize that one-to-one, like that coaching, and just make a time and actually charge for it as a service. I mean, that's very reasonable. I mean, if people want a plumber to come out and fix their tap, you know, it's a service, but often people don't feel comfortable of charging for that. But I do encourage you to, because you take time to learn it, you take time to organize it, you take time to respond to it, and it's one thing being in the midst of a community garden and then just while you're working together, chatting away and sharing knowledge and all that. But if you're actually, you know, in your home and you taking your time away from doing that and you're setting up, your studio office or whatever it is to do that work, that's work, that's something that you really should value yourself for. So this is why I think it's important to think about how you might offer it. Like there's one thing, I used to see a lot of courses just chop, okay, done my workshop, chop, bye, done you, next. Like that also could work, but I think there's something really important about creating this ongoing learning community, and how you do it is really important, and how that fits and nourishes you and maybe creates an opportunity for follow-up courses, for a membership, for some other type of program. Yeah. And the other way, just before I start reading what you've written down below, there was a conversation there too about, I think it was you, Jerry, about how people could possibly be apprentices and things in this. And I've seen it really often, like if you were, say, running let's just take the permaculture design course, for example, to invite people in who are just learning to be a student teacher. And it's actually how I got started teaching permaculture design courses as well. There was someone who lived in the area, and they said, I'd love for you to come in and teach these segments because I see that you've got a lot of, you're really good at that kind of stuff. So they ran all the most of the bits, and I just ran that bit. But then I got to be in there and see how they ran the rest of it. And then I would go to some other courses and I help on those, and I helped on some others. And so it was actually a process of helping that I got to see different ways, what I thought worked well, what I thought could work differently, and then kept evolving and adapting. And so for a very long time, um, I've had people open their wings for me. And so now I feel, like in my eldership as a permaculture educator, I've been doing it for decades, like to also do that. So, that's why we've created things like Perma Youth and host a lot of things to help young people to step into learning how to become educators and to speak up and do it. So I offer lots of different sort of mentoring for all different ages, because it's important. So how, I think the more that you become confident in certain things, like, if you were a forest gardener, or if you were running children's workshops and there was people who are interested, like you could ask people to buddy you. They could be your assistant. You could invite them to run a small piece and then, run more and more if you felt like they're okay. And then encourage them, have it. I also was doing this in East Africa. There was a number of student teachers. And so I was there not to teach, but I was there at the end of each day. We would have a chat about, like, what worked well, what do you think you could do differently? What are we going to do tomorrow to build on that experience? And so, as just someone to be a support person for a new group of teachers learning. And, that in that case, that was a volunteer role, but that could also be a paid role in a course as well, that you are part of a team. All right, I'm going to scroll down now. There's 9 new messages that I haven't seen. Yeah, coaching. We're all familiar with coaching of all different kinds, and that, uh, permaculture coaching is something that's, even one-to-one design coaching. If you do a design for someone, that ongoing learning that happens after you've done a design for people. Like if you become a design consultant, you might want to think about how you can offer ongoing, like once a month, I'll come around and, check in on how you're going with the implementation and see if you've got any other things that you'd like me to support you with. Like that could be a service that you offer. Yeah, having a cohort group, yeah, that does something in the community. Yeah, and I think this is important. Like if you just have a WhatsApp group and people share for a while and there's a buzz, that's really nice. But if you have the chance to get people to come together and then do something with that learning that creates something more. And so what's happening is an amplification of their learning rather than it just kind of dwindling away. Like, when you put that energy into running a course, you want something to happen with it. And it might in a garden here, and you actually never know what happens because people take it into their lives and it just goes. But it's really nice when it does come into like the common space and people come together to do something in the commons. And I think that's very cool. Um, yeah, seasonal updates. If you're local, you could have a meetup place. Um, you know, uh, when I move around the country and different parts of the world, I try and let people know I'm going to be in Melbourne this week, or I'm going to be in Western Australia then, like, and try and encourage people to meet up with you, but you can also encourage people to meet up locally as well. Um, yeah, life coaches have a monthly. That's right. You could say, I offer a package of, five follow-up sessions. 2 of them are free and you pay for 3 or something like, and then you could have, if you want to continue this, here's the rate. So, that is designing actually a program. That is an education program design in and of itself. And so you could really look at that as something to work on. Um, Yeah, energy exchange. Yeah, it doesn't have to be money as well, does it? It could be a whole lot of different ways. Like the gift economy, um, there's so many ways that you can have value, that that you'd have to pay for otherwise. So for example, I know some people were coming here to get some mentoring on things, and in exchange, they were builders, and so they built my back veranda for me. It's like I would have had to have paid a builder or spent, a week or 2 of my time to take off doing the work to build it. So it was actually a really good exchange. So there is ways of doing that. Oh, I really like the idea too of having creating a publication together. And I was thinking, you could create, as educators, if you were teaching other educators, you could be creating a lesson plan library, for example, or if what Jerry was talking about with the recipes and doing plants, it could be all the different things you could do with, this month we're going to focus on comfrey, just for example. What are all the different recipes that we can gather about comfrey this week? Or what are all the different, like foods that grow in this area in the shady environment? Like have a theme and then gather things that are around that. And yeah, and then that could be a little booklet that you create together. So many ideas. So many ideas. So, what I'd like to encourage you to do would be to really think through about, yeah, what would maybe something. So, in the little handout that I've got here, it's like, what's one thing that you think you might like to try out? So, what's one thing that you can add to what you're doing? So maybe you're in the process of designing your education program at this point. Maybe you're not quite there yet, but jot down the designs of what you think, jot down the ideas of what you think you'd like to design into your program. And then think about who might you like to involve in that as well. Like who do you need? What's the ecology of helpers that will help you make that happen? So I'd love to hear any feedback over time about where you go with that. So just as a closing, because I've got a minute or so left, anyone who'd like to share, like, what's one thing that you think you might go away from this session and add into what you're doing? What's something that you might take with you? Anyone got anything on their mind that think, yep, I'm going to do that? Universal basic income make our lives easier, right, Dora? Yeah. And then we could create a whole lot of amazing things for kind humans, for humankind and humanity, and remembering that learning never stops. Yes, learning never stops. And so to keep that in mind is what I really want to encourage you to think about. As you're designing your education programs, whether you've already designed some and you think, how might I add some things onto that? And then as you're designing future programs, to really think about, for this particular group, and given my, ability to support, what will that look like? What am I going to offer people afterwards? And then to really sort of reflect too, like keep your lens, put a lens on for the next little while and see if you can think of anything that you see around you, think, there's a really good idea. Just be an ideas collector on this particular theme and start to think about how you might weave that more into what you're doing. Sure, I can email that to you. Yes. Yes, being available but not overextended. That's a very good reflection. And because we get all really excited, think, I'll do this and this and this, and I'll offer it. And then, like 3 months down the track, you think, I wish I hadn't done that. So yeah, be really clear on your boundaries of what that is. So taking the time to sort of map it out a bit is worthwhile. Yeah. Notion, you've got into Notion recently, Kate? Yeah, yeah. My daughter said that I should check it out too. I kind of looked at it and I went, not yet. I'm learning a few other things at the moment. Have you finding it useful? Oh, cool. You're on mute.
Oh, I'll forward you my plant database that every time and as far as I can work out, you just have to change the settings so that the for each plant that it would be your climate. But so mine's temperate for where I am, and everything
Cool.
that mine because you've got infinite cross references of databases, which are with a brain like mine, it's too much. It's too much. It's like
I would love to see how you're using it.
tiny little cakes with eat me and drink me and rabbit holes everywhere.
I
But
can
I've got this
imagine.
database that's got like an apothecary. It's got I live in the I'm trying to actually work out a GIS and this is my problem, too many ideas, a GIS way of being able to stand in my garden and stand in a spot, and it will be like, oh, this gets 6 hours of sun every day. You can plant this guild, and it just gives you like it will just spit out a complete plant list for you, and then you'd be able to go, oh, well, okay, I could go to Bunnings then, or what, like for the person that
Yeah.
only has availability to
Well,
Bunnings.
this is another really interesting thing to explore. And, some people may or may not be interested, but, if you put all of your documents and resources and materials into a
I could sell a
GPT,
system.
you can actually say, here's Kate's, um, you know, uh, AI.
Database.
Like you can look into my work and ask me any questions about anything that's in my world. And I'm thinking sort of like Gwenaëlle with um, equine permaculture. You can put all of your resources into there, and then people can ask questions of it, and people can, and like there's a membership to access that. And so
Yeah, and so
it's not just a free for all in the Chat GPT. There's actually a world that you've created a cell wall around that.
well, you need to know what to ask ChatGPT, because I had a joke with it the other day that it wasn't correct. And if people, I said, oh, maybe you should, I should have asked you health questions, because you probably would, yeah, I'm probably quite dead by now if I listened to you, because it was not correct, and I had a big argument with it. Anyway, but mine, because yeah, there's a lot of just putting things into ChatGPT and thinking that it's
Yeah.
God and it tells you everything. But
And it
you still need to do
hallucinates
your
quite often too. Whereas in your own system, you could actually create sort of particular prompts or questions that are, what would you like to ask? Here's the options of the sorts of
yes.
questions you can ask, and you can really create. So anyway,
It
there's a very
became the
quick.
it became the basis of my community. It's how I'm gathering all the information to do the calendar wheel,
Yeah, great.
because I need to be able to have all the information there so that I can feed it into another program.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Mm.
So Notion is basically a sort of a digital platform to help you organize multiple layers of notes and things and actually do something with it. If you
Yeah.
just
Sorry.
Google Notion, Jerry, you'll see like the landing page for it and see it. It's one of those new tools. I'm going to have to love you and leave you all, because in a few minutes I'm going to be joined by a number of the leading lights from all the refugee settlements, and we're going to have a bit of a catch up. So I better wrap it up. Thank you for being here. It's so good to see you all. I will drop the little handout thing into the chat, and also a selection of whole other like suggestions as well. I'll drop that into Hive underneath where this event is. So if you go to this event, you'll find all the resources there. All right. Take care, everyone. Lovely to
Thank you,
see you all.
everyone.
Bye.